I'm embarrassed to say that I fell for one of the oldest opening traps in the book. I was white. We played the Ruy Lopez. And my opponent played a6. I want to mention an old move here is d6. It's called the Steinitz defense. And a typical move in this position is d4 to get this classical pawn center. But my opponent played a6. Bishop a4, and then played d6. And this is called the modern Steinitz defense. It's an improvement on the old Steinitz defense. In this position, it's not advisable to play what I played, d4. It doesn't quite work. Better moves in this position are either castles, c3 to prepare d4, gain an escape square for your bishop, or you can capture on c6. Okay, but I played d4, and the reason that's not so good is because of the response b5, bishop b3, knight takes d4. And here black is hitting this important light squared bishop on b3. And so what I played in response was I captured the knight. I want to preserve my powerful bishop. My opponent took my knight back, and here's where I fell for the trap. I played queen takes d4. Okay, now there's no way out of the trap. And it goes like this. c5, threatening c4 to trap the bishop. The queen has to move somewhere. I tried queen to d5. For a split second it looked good for me because I'm attacking the rook in the corner and I'm threatening checkmate. But my opponent coolly responded with bishop e6, covering both threats. Okay, so I played queen to c6 check. My opponent responded by blocking with the bishop, which is correct. Then I moved the queen back to d5 to threaten mate again. And my opponent played c4, trapping the bishop and stopping the mate. And I resigned a couple dozen moves later after getting a couple pawns for my bishop. It's interesting to note that in a 1924 book, the future world champion Alexander Alekhine had some analysis on this very position right here on the board and claimed it was a draw by repetition. Of course, he was wrong. It's not a draw by repetition. Black should not repeat here. He should push c4. So kind of a strange oversight by such a strong player. In fact, this position was also reached by another grandmaster by the name of Steiner against Capablanca about 5 or 6 years after Alekhine published that analysis. And Capablanca didn't repeat. He trapped the bishop. And there's some speculation that perhaps Steiner purposefully went into this line because he blindly trusted Alekhine's analysis that he had read in this book. Anyway, after falling for this opening trap, I decided to give it a try myself. Wondered if I could catch somebody else in it. So I played the black side of the Ruy Lopez. And after I played d6, I wondered how many games is it going to take me before somebody plays this inferior move d4. Well, it only took one game. Apparently that looks like a good move to people. So I followed the game that I lost. I played knight takes d4. My opponent took the knight. However, my opponent didn't fall for the trap. So I suppose most people at my rating level know about this trap. Instead, he played bishop to d5, hitting my rook in the corner. And I moved it to b8, and then he took the pawn. And I thought, hey, that's pretty clever. He moved the bishop out of the way off of b3 so I can't trap it anymore. And he got the pawn back. Well, after thinking for quite a while in this position, I wanted to trap his bishop anyway. I wanted to play c6 and drive the bishop back to b3. So to prepare that, I played bishop d7. Okay, my opponent castled, which is a mistake. I played c6. I forced his bishop back to b3. And then I pushed to c5, threatening the queen and threatening c4. And my opponent played queen d5 to threaten mate. And I just pushed c4, trapping the bishop and stopping the mate. And I ended up winning. So there's kind of a delayed version of this Noah's Ark trap possible that's worth knowing about. By the way, in this particular position, after black takes the knight, what should white do? Is bishop to d5 the best move? Well, it's a possible move, but another possibility is to play c3. That seems to be kind of popular, although I don't know why so many people are playing this line with a d4 anyway. And the point of c3 is black has nothing better to do than to take it, and white could either recapture with the knight, and so this is a gambit line. White is down a pawn, and he's trying to get quick development. Or white actually has a forced draw, starting with queen d5, threatening the rook and mate like before. Okay, and bishop to e6 covers both threats. But then queen to c6 check forces the bishop back. And then this is a repetition because we have no c4 like in the Noah's Ark trap. So white can play for a draw. If you're playing against a higher rated player, you might go for this. Okay, I'll also mention that the Noah's Ark trap can come up in other openings. So let's take a look at the closed Ruy Lopez. Which instead of d6 is the move knight to f6, and then white generally castles and black plays bishop to e7. And that's the closed variation. And typically white plays rook to e1 in this position to guard his pawn. But suppose white decides, hey, I want to play d4. Okay, well, that's not such a good move for the same reason that we saw earlier. Black has b5, bishop b3, and then knight takes d4, threatening this bishop. White can take the knight, but that pawn is poisoned just as before. He should not take it because of the move c5 with c4 to follow. White doesn't even have queen to d5 in this line, so he'll move the queen somewhere else and get his bishop trapped. There are simplistic versions of this trap in other openings. I have gotten my bishop trapped on b3 many times in my life. For example, in the Sicilian defense, after knight c6 here, white can try bishop b5. That's known as the Rossolimo variation. And it's not a very popular move, but black can play a6. And then in this position, white should exchange the bishop. He certainly should not retreat it to a4 because it immediately gets trapped, just like in the Noah's Ark trap. So watch out for that bishop on b3. Thanks for watching the video.